Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it. So, a little bit of my history. Sometimes God allows things to happen to give you the opportunity to choose to change your mind, right? And such was my case in that when I was in pre med and I was doing all my medical training and going through everything I went through, my wife ended up with a very rare disease. And because of that, I had to dive deeper and deeper to figure out what it was. And just real quick, like I won't go into much detail, but they basically gave her 3 years to live at 24 years of age. And I feel like I served a better God or a different God, and I was going to dive into it and find it out. So you have to have a why and a reason and a purpose that you're willing to do probably the unthinkable, like travel across that river you were just talking about. And instead of having a 9 horsepower, you got a paddle. You're going to get across that river. You're going to save somebody's lives. And so that was my drive, right? I had a real reason, a real severe reason. And fortunately, in that whole scenario, she ended up living about another 22, 23 years before she did pass. And so that gave me my why I need to figure out how does the body really work. And I was like a sponge. I soaked everything in. I went everywhere I could. I did study after study, 19 different degrees and certifications and all the things that I've done. If there was a way to go learn something, man, I was the first guy in and I was on the front row and I took notes. And I was blessed with a very high IQ and ability to remember a lot of stuff and then start processing all those things together. So that's kind of my background. That's why I dove into it. And so when I had the opportunity to come out to your place and look at what this Phix was, as people have heard me say before, I thought it was snake oil. I thought there's no way that thing's going to do what they think it's going to do. And then once again, God challenged me to go home and do some research. And I am fortunate to have so much ability to get into research and process research and bring it together in a way that I can. And so let me just fast forward 400 hours later of research, probably a little bit more than that, of diving into what the mature hops extract really is, specifically on the bitter acid sides. And so what it was. And I told Byron back at the beginning, I go, this is probably the most significant thing I've seen in 40 years of practice. Well, let's fast forward 6, 7 months later, and it is 10 times beyond that. When you realize the essence of where we are in healthcare, and as Byron mentioned earlier, in where we are in America and all of the health challenges that we have. We were sitting around earlier in my family, and there's a lot of us in healthcare, and we were just talking about 20, 30 years ago, we didn't see hardly any of the diseases we see now, right? Why? And there's a whole nother pathway there. I won't go into that. But when you start realizing what has changed in our lives, and this is why I agree with Byron, is that this is God's health hack. On the third day of creation, God created this product, this flower, if you will, and he's allowed us now to bring it out at this time. And so from my point of view as a physician, and we have hundreds of physicians that are involved with us now, when I look at this process, I'm going, we're actually here to help people get well. That's really our nature, is we're in the healthcare business to help people regain their health, not to continue to perpetuate sickness, which is what most of healthcare really is. So as I dug into my research and started looking at it, I thought, how do I bring this into my practice? And there's stories out there. I mean, we have other videos you can watch on that. But here's what's interesting. The more that we start changing the dynamic of the body, or what we call the functionality of the body, the better the body started to respond. And then the more you did it, the more it went. So much so that by the time we published all the research on this, we started looking at how is the outcome of this product. And sometimes people say, all right, Bowers, how long do I have to take it? I go, well, how long do you want to get healthier and healthier and healthier? Because we live in a world that isn't designed to give us health. It's attacking us almost from every angle. Whether you go to the electricity, whether you go to the Wi-Fi, whether you go to the foods, whether you go to the chemistry, there are so many chemicals put in our food. When I started practice 40 some plus years ago, I think there wasn't even like 30,000. Now we have over 130,000 or more chemicals that's just in our food chain. What is that doing to our body? And here we have a product that's 100% natural, right? Has the ability to go in and interrupt the dysfunction, turn the pathway back around, and start rebuilding it back up. I mean, I can go through so many variables that is, I guess here, well, let me put it this way. When I think about why a person should take this, the list is very long. When I think how long they should take it, the list is very short. Here's what I mean by that. When we're talking about 200 to 300 different diseases that this one product can help turn around and reduce its inflammatory issue of, what's the end game of that? Number two thing, or two things I look at. One is the longevity of that life. And that's the short answer. But then the quality of that life in that longevity. So I had a doctor the other day ask me, he says, okay, well, if I put my patients on it, how long should they be on it? I go, well, how long do you want them to slow down the aging process and thereby re-energize the youthfulness that scripture talks about? Because as an epigeneticist, when I look at the DNA and I look at what's called the AMPK genome, and I look at how we turn on the repairability and give energy to maintain our youthful body, and if we don't have that, to reinstitute that and reinitiate that in there, this product does it. And so for people who heard me talk about this, I tell people this is the beginning phase, or the first domino that brings health into the body. We're not starting at domino 5, 10, 15, 20. We're at number 1. If we can turn on this switch, now we can start turning all the other switches. And not only does this initiate that first phase, but by the time we get down into the small intestine, we start talking about these things called stem cells, which is what builds the entirety of the body. And we can reignite that capacity, or that capability, excuse me, and then increase its capacity. We're restoring health back into the body. And we're not restoring old health, we're restoring new health, which means those new cells now have a lot longer that they can live. And that's the longevity. So when I look at why somebody should take it, as I said, it's a very long, very wide list. But how long they should take it, it's a short list. How healthy and well do you want to feel? And then how long do you want to feel that away? And that's the part that gets me so excited. I had someone says, okay, well, if I reduce inflammation and if I increase metabolism and I burn my fat, all right, the visceral fat, which is, that's the dangerous part if it gets, excuse me, gets oxidized, then what? You're building new cells. And if I look as an epigeneticist, we talked about in the first 25 to 27 years, we're literally building DNA. From about 27 to 32, 33, we're maintaining DNA. And from 33 on, we're repairing it. How fast do we want to repair it? And the further we go down that pathway, the harder it becomes to repair. Yeah. And here's a funny statement. Why don't we die healthy? Isn't that crazy? Why do we have to die sick, right? If we can continually turn on our body's ability to continually produce cells instead of repairing them, it's a long time frame we can live a healthy life. Let me state this way. The number one reason people go to see their doctor is some kind of a condition of pain, right? And so when you look at what's called the mechanoreceptors, or the things that turn on pain firing mechanisms, we like to call them fire alarms. Something's gone wrong in the body, it starts sending off pain signals, right? Now, sometimes in functional medicine, we just call that dysfunction. But when you look at the number one thing that's going to start reversing that pain sensory, right? When we start looking at that phase to start reducing down the fires or the inflammatory reactions that set off those pain mechanoreceptors, this is the first thing. When I look at this, I go, what else can I put into this system naturally that's going to turn on all the lights? It's like getting all the lights green to go 100 miles. You don't have to stop. It just perpetually continues to build and build and build and build. That's why I think this is probably the most significant thing I have found in 42, 43 years of being in healthcare.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, let me go back to one statement if everybody, the guests didn't catch this, because Ben, let me go a different direction, and short answers are okay because these are going to be really pointed questions. Did you need to do MPG?
Boy, personally, yes.
Okay.
But on from the health side, did I need to do MPG? No, I didn't need to.
Okay, which leads me back to the statement you made. How many hours of research have you put in since you said yes and saw the launch of Phix?
On the product and its effect itself, 400 to 500 hours minimum.
Okay. And so real quick, if a guest is on here and somebody were to send them one of your pieces, and they don't need this because they're not going to understand it. I didn't understand anything you just said. Okay. And I spent a bunch of time with Doc this week, and he knows that. And frankly, so the guests hear this, I don't care to understand it. Why do I need to? You spent 400 hours. I don't need to spend 4 seconds. I mean, that's kind of my attitude, Byron. But with that said, somebody might be tempted to send what we call an ACE page, Byron, with the white papers you did, Ben. just really quickly and be super quick on this one, but you pulled that information from what you told me was the public domain, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's not your research. You used your research company to research, correct?
Correct. For the white paper, you're correct.
Okay. And how many years of research were out there on these bitter acids and matured hops?
All the way back to the 1940s.
Okay. So this wasn't a surprise to you as a doctor?
Here's what's interesting. We've used the hops flower as inflammatory issues, specifically on some what is called the endocrine or the hormone pathways, right? What we never had was all three of these elements prior to this. Prior to 2017, they really weren't there out there in the research. Other than if you go back to the 50s, there's a little bit done in the early 60s, and then 2008, 2014. But if you really looked at all that research, it seemed like it was kind of limited in the nature of what is available now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it was limited is because there wasn't that much product that people could go do the research on. But as it finally came out, and then there was a lot of research that started being published about that, now other people could go and amplify on that research. So the interesting thing is we had the alpha, the beta, and the gamma elements on the bitter acids. Won't dive into that. But they only had one at the beginning. Then they got the second one. Then they got the third one. The third one we've had since about 2017, 2019. And now we're having research on top of the other two. And that third element is significant, right? It is the catalyst of, if you will, of the prior two, of the alpha and the beta. So without that catalyst, it'll still do it'll do some of the job, but it won't do it like it will when you have that third element that is in there. And that's
Sure.
what makes the difference here.
So when real quick, when you hear all the testimonials, because you've been an intricate part and you're working with Byron, by the way, everybody, Ben's a brand new diamond, so you're not just here pontificating medical terminology. You're actually building.
I believe
right?
it,
So
not build
kudos
it,
to you.
right?
Yeah, exactly. So there's a reason why, everybody. Success leaves clues. But yesterday we did all these Zooms and we had all these guests on there. The reality is those testimonials don't shock you, correct?
In the reality of it now, no, to the depth that some of these have gone. And that's why, for those who have heard the stories, when I sit down and looked at this from a functional side, and I came up with like 30 or 40 different questions so I can analyze patients and clients and start understanding. And the reason I did that, I wanted them to see the results that they probably wouldn't see at the beginning phases. When I looked at all the different systems this was going to start turning around or turning back on so it can utilize itself, I knew that just in my experience of being a physician, so many people are going to ignore them or not see them. And so I designed the questions to bring it out. Now, there's a few of them in there that really did surprise me, to be honest with you, of all those different things up there. But the majority of the ones that I see, if I put a patient on this and I go, all right, I know there's 30 or 40 things that can potentially happen to you. Well, doing so many hundreds of people now, I'm able to look at that and go, I know that 6 to 9 of them you're going to show up with. I don't know what 6 or 9 of the 30, but I know 6 to 9 of them in 3, 4, 5, 6 months, you will notice a change in your body, right? So yeah, we hypothesized that would come up, but we needed to go through the trials and all the testing, all the stuff that we did actually within our clinic itself to find those and to prove that theory out, and it worked out.
I only got one more question, Byron. I'll let you take over. So Ben, and we didn't rehearse any of this.
Nope.
You didn't have the 400 hours. I want it for the person that's like me that didn't understand a thing you just said. You didn't have any of that research when you made a $200 decision, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
just want to set the record straight for everybody here. So, Byron,
I did see potential. I did see potential. I just didn't see it that far out. It was after my second exposure with Byron that I'm like, okay, I'm an idiot to not do this, right? Even if it only does a little bit of what I think it was going to be, right? Even if it just did that one thing that we were talking about at the beginning, that was a no-brainer for me. Now, I didn't want to do it. Don't misunderstand. I didn't. But when I finally wrestled that in my own mind and said, okay, God, I'm going to do what you're telling me to do, I'm signing up. Let's go.